Hello ECF. Once again, it's great to talk to you about the Psalms, and I hope it's been a time of enjoyment and encouragement for you. What I'd like to do today is actually go a little bit further out from the Psalms and give you a broader perspective of how the Psalms are working, as I'm sure that you've now come to understand. You're looking at poetry, and when it comes to poetry in the Bible, it sometimes gets a little bit complicated. And so we're going to look at the broader categories of what the Psalms are. Now, many commentators have different categories or different ideas of how they fit in, or many more or many less, but we're going to look at the general ones that they have. And so the first category that we're going to look at is what is called the hymn psalms. These hymn psalms are types of songs, they're celebration. It's the idea of when things are going well for the psalmist and for those who are listening. And this is often a type of praise towards God, as He is God of creator, He is God who is the Redeemer. And one of those psalms that we have is the idea of Psalm 29, 1-2, which says this: "Ascribe to the Lord, O heavenly beings, ascribe to the Lord glory and strength, ascribe to the Lord the glory due His name, worship the Lord in the splendor of holiness." And so there you get a picture of like the idea of really praising out to God and singing His name. The second category is the idea of lament psalms. So this is almost the direct opposite of the hymn psalms. It's the idea when you come into times of despair and pain. It's often around the idea of disorientation. And as you'll see the psalmist, it's often them crying out to God for where He is and that they're in need of Him. And a good one to look at here is the idea of Psalm 13, verse 1-2, one that you would have read recently, which says, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I take counsel in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all the day? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me?" And so you get the picture here with these lament psalms, often called dark nights of the soul psalms. The next category of psalm that we have is the idea of thanksgiving. And so obviously as you go through the Psalms, you'll see times where the psalmist is just thankful to God and for what He has done, how He's brought them out of a time of lament, how He's given them something that they've needed, or how God's answered their call. And so it's often joy and gratitude. For example, and one that you're going to come up to soon, in Psalm 34 verse 1, "I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth." And so you get the picture there once again of joy and thanksgiving. Another psalm category is the wisdom psalms. And so this is psalms that are instructive. It's giving guidelines to practical living. And one that I'm sure is stuck in your memory is Psalm 1, that speaks to this very idea, where you see it says the idea, "But he delights in the law of the Lord, and on His law he meditates day and night." So here you get this wonderful picture of the idea of you going towards the Lord and understanding what you need to do. Wisdom psalms. An interesting category of psalms, but you see it throughout the psalms, is called the imprecatory psalms. They're interesting in that it's sometimes a little bit off-putting for us as believers, because in these psalms, it's often the psalmist crying out to God's wrath and justice, and the idea of God destroying His enemies. And this sometimes doesn't sit well with us because we want to be people of forgiveness and grace. But it's important to understand that we believe in the complete God, not just an aspect of Him. We believe in all He is, and He is definitely a God of love and goodness, but He is also definitely a God of righteousness and justice. And so in these psalms, you often hear David crying out that God would deal with his enemies. And one that we would have been just through as well is Psalm chapter 7, in which you hear the psalmist write, "Arise, O Lord, in your anger. Lift yourself up against the fury of my enemies. Awake for me, you have appointed a judgment." And so once again, there we get this picture here of God coming and bringing His justice. The last category that I want to speak about is what is known as the royal psalms, or the Messianic Psalms. And you get the picture here, once again, is that the psalmist is writing not only of David and the kings, but more importantly, is writing about the future Messianic king who is Jesus Christ. And so often in these Psalms, we hear the picture of redemption and salvation and God's strength. And these are special Psalms that we see throughout the book. And one that you would have just read recently would have been Psalm 2, but also Psalm 18. We get a bit of picture of this. And so I just want to read the very first two verses there. I love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my rock, in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. And so once again, there we get the picture that Jesus Christ ultimately is our salvation and our rock. And so as you continue through the Psalms, ECF, just keep these categories in mind, and it'll help you get a different picture and understanding of what that psalm is trying to say. And as we continue going through it and you ask those questions, what is this saying about God? These Psalms help you understand that. If you're going through a psalm that's speaking about his wrath and justice, you understand where it's coming from. If it's a psalm of lament, you'll understand why that psalmist is crying out in those ways. And it's beautiful as well as you think about these Psalms, also think about your prayers. And maybe maybe these are some of the prayers that I can be having. Prayers of lament, prayers of wisdom, prayers of praise towards God, and even prayers crying out for God's righteousness and justice to come, but at the same time praying out that God would forgive those who need forgiveness. Thank you, ECF. I hope you have a wonderful day and enjoy your reading through the Psalms.